Yeah. I was thinking
So,
about that. I was thinking about that with the black budget spending and stuff too. Before we did this interview, I was thinking back to our show with Douglas Vogt, and I know you're aware of Douglas Vogt and his work. And he thought that the American government knew about his research that in 2046 it was going to happen, or is it 2040? Now I always get that in the Phoenix event. No,
you
20.
know, Doug,
And but he said that Trump in his first term, they authorized like I don't know, like I mean, $1 trillion, is that enough to feed 5 billion people for a year? Like he said that they built these underground bunkers, you know. And part of me, there's a sympathetic part of me that's like maybe they were paying attention to all this and they were really trying to do something to save humanity. I mean, whether who gets chosen or not, I don't know. It's a whole different issue, but maybe they're spending trillions of dollars of these black project stuff on trying to build the infrastructure to save humanity. I mean,
it
Well,
makes
the
sense.
other thing is, if you get through with the tech, you win. I mean, you're the new ruler of the planet.
Yeah. Now, I don't think any tech is going to make it through because the induction goes all the way to the core. Everything circuitry related is going to melt. But you can certainly hide from the worst parts of the disaster. And here's something I figured out. If you just look at the acknowledged underground bases and underground tunnels, you could fit millions of people in them. Think about what they've got that we don't know about, that isn't acknowledged. And so they're clearly building an enormous complex. They're doing an enormous amount of preparation to the point where if they were just planning on letting the elites hide in there, they would have been done years ago.
Yeah, that's what
It
I'm
doesn't
getting.
take
Well,
that
there's a
much.
huge, like, if you're using your head, there's a huge, like, inbreeding, you got to really think it through. Otherwise, what's the point
Well,
of
I mean,
survival?
and here's the thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that they love us and they want to protect us. Maybe they want to protect their slave class so that they can still be at the top of the pyramid when the next age of Earth begins. So they don't have to do all the hard stuff. Maybe they want their, 10,000 slaves for every elite. Maybe that's what they want. But regardless of what you think their rationale is, it does appear, all the evidence suggests they are preparing to not only have a continuity of power after this, but they're trying to save a lot of people. And that couldn't be more obvious based on all of the information, even though there is plenty of evidence that there are some who want depopulation. There is all the evidence in the world that they want to keep this relatively quiet for the time being.
Well, and I don't think anyone ever thought depopulation meant zero. It's just they want, 3 out of 4 gone so that we can get down to a more manageable fucking herd.
Somebody asked about that exact thing on X the other day. Actually, I think it was Laura Matsu. She's like, well, if they want to if they're going to depopulate and they know like, why would they do that knowing the cataclysm? If they know the cataclysm is coming, why would they depopulate? And I said, well, it's because the less survivors looking for your underground city, the better. I mean, really.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Could you imagine, like, they're going to lose all of their technological advantages. They could, in theory, keep the most sophisticated of mechanical things. So,
like a 10,000-year-old clock.
Maybe,
although 10,000-year clock.
I don't think
you heard about that. Have you heard about that?
So, first of all, you heard about that because I broke the story open 5 or 6 years ago, and I was like, guys, this clock story is horse crap, especially because he's hollowing out a mountain, something I'm telling everybody to do, like find a way to get underground. And right across the street from that mountain he's hollowing out is the Blue Origin launch facility, the practice launch facility. So literally across the street, Bezos can go up or he can go down, which is, you got to be kidding me. There's a reason why Elon Musk has SpaceX and the Boring Company. There's a reason why Richard Branson, at where the majority of his Virgin Galactic space capable craft are, underneath the tower is his bunker. This is not a coincidence. They don't know at this point whether they're going to want to go up or go down, but they know they want both of those options. And you can't believe the number of billionaires who have something similar to that.
Speaking of that, why would Zuck build his in Hawaii then? If you think Hawaii,
because he didn't get the whole story.
Really?
All right, so come on. Are you going to tell me you haven't read The Great Gatsby? Picture you are the old money. You're one of the original 13 family.
Okay, yeah, okay.
You want Mark Zuckerberg in the aftermath with you? No. You're like, all right, we're going to Hawaii, and we're just going to let him die. So
because you think Hawaii toast, right?
Him, and they've sent him to die in that hole in Hawaii.
Well, I was just going off the other day because I was like, why does Mark Zuckerberg need this crazy super yacht with like 3 support yachts? One holds like a year of fuel and the other one's full of food. It's like he got some of the memo.
Exactly. He did. He got half the story. Jeff Bezos, I'm almost certain he got the whole story, because not only is he building, that exactly where that's within the range where I would tell him to build it. Have you ever heard of the super yacht Bezos has, which he playfully calls the Black Pearl? It is.
That's the one that he got in trouble, right? Because they had to take down a bridge to get it out of the port or whatever.
But right now, where it's docked. So I mentioned that he's hollowing out that mountain right across the street from the Blue Origin launch facility, where water would go if you dropped a lake right on where water would come down off of America. The exact central point is where the Black Pearl is docked.
Wow, no way.
He's not playing. That dude is not playing around at all.
Wow.
And so, so you've got elites who clearly know. You've got other elites who've been given half the story in a very old money versus new money kind of thing, where the old money realizes they can't just completely leave them out of this, but if they bring them in a little bit, they can get them on their side and then puppet them in any way that they want and make sure that they're not around in the aftermath to have to share power with, right? And so if you think about it, if you are old money elite and 30 to 60% evil, is this not how you would do it too? That's how I would do it. If I could put myself in their shoes for a moment, that's exactly what I would do. And so that's what's happening. And there are better examples of people hearing hints of the truth, but obviously not getting the full story. Like Post Malone and Kim Kardashian are both building mega bunkers in LA. What?
It's kind of hard to seal a bunker.
Somebody ought to tell them the rest of the story. Somebody needs to tell them the rest of the story, because they didn't get the whole story.
Well, can we get into that, unpack that a little bit? Like, where, first of all, what does this Friday in August look like when this happens, and where do you want to be?
So there's a couple of places I've identified around the world that look good. One of the best ones, not considering culture, is actually the mountain range that borders Mongolia and northern China. Of course, culturally, for people that look like us, that one presents a little bit of a problem.
We were actually playing around with this floodmap.org or whatever website where you can change the sea level. And we were looking at, even if we added, I think we added 2 miles of water, or maybe even 3 miles of water. And there was still like a giant chunk of China that was still good. And it's like every place else in the world is little dots, but there's this giant chunk of China that seems like if you could get in there and start doing some archaeology, you might really find some cool stuff.
I would agree with that. There aren't a lot of good places in Australia. There are only a handful of good places in Africa, but it turns out those are some of the most violent, horrifying places on the world right now. The Carpathians in Europe are probably one of the only safe places there. And after that, it's the eastern range of the Rockies, from Alberta all the way down into Mexico. We're talking, on that line between, where the Rocky Mountains come down into Mexico, all the way up past Albuquerque, past Denver, to the west of Calgary and Edmonton up in Alberta. That whole eastern side of the Rockies is a fantastic survival zone, provided you aren't in the middle of a big city, which is a terrible place to be. People are going to eat each other. Provided you're not sitting on a volcano. That's the best place for most of the people who listen to me, and I imagine most of the people who listen to you as well.
Can I ask a bit about the process, because it's a bit confusing for me when we get into Randall talking about cometary impact and Shock talking about the solar stuff, Vogt talking about micronovas, and then the crustal displacement versus the core mantle decoupling, and then the magnetic pole shift. Like, is there many of these things happening at once, or how does the actual process happen?
So I like Robert Schoch's concept that a major solar outburst had something to do with it. Back when Robert Schoch had formulated that, and the first time he ever mentioned that was actually on his interview on my channel about 12 or 13 years ago now. It's one of the best videos that I've ever put out. Probably should try to get him back for another one. But
yeah, he just did a big presentation on just this.
Yeah, and he and I were probably talking for 10 hours over 3 or 4 days about the possibility that a major solar outburst could end the ice age in hours.
Wow.
Just hours. And which is something he mentioned in the interview. But so there's a lot of different stuff going around. Ethical skeptics' core mantle decoupling is really interesting. It can explain some of the evidence. I believe it can't explain all of the evidence. And I also can't make the math and the physics work for the entire Earth mass tilting. It's easy, actually. If you can unlock the crust from the mantle, the crust will just do it on its own.
With a magnetic pole shift? I mean, does that have...
The magnetic pole shift doesn't do it. It's what happens. It's what the sun does to Earth that unlocks the crust during that.
Okay.
With that, the math and the physics is easy. In terms of Doug Vogt, he doesn't advocate for a tilt at all. He thinks the Earth stops and then goes back the other way, that's patently absurd from a mathematical and physical perspective. It's as absurd as him trying to say he knows the exact date and time of the micronova based on decoding numbers in the Torah. Sounds fun, but no. Doug Vogt's most important contribution was he went through the 70 to 100-year-old studies found in Nature and Science that basically proved that there's nova level isotopes in these disaster layers. So, you've got normal layering and sedimentation, and then you've got the magnetism pointing the other way. We've got volcanic ash. We've got way too many fossils in here. This is the disaster layer. There's also nova level isotopes you only find in there with very short half-lives. And that's how, in my opinion, Doug added the last piece that proves that the sun novas during this event. And now that we are here and we realize, okay, we have to account for geophysical, Earth-related, and heliophysical, sun-related stuff, but we can also look around the solar system and we can see Earth is not the only planet that is having climate change right now. In fact, most of the other planets have begun to change faster than we are. And then, now that we have very good data about electromagnetism of the galaxy, and we know that, hey, every couple thousand years, we actually, from a physical standpoint, have to. It's basically a law in this galaxy. Every solar system takes a galactic magnetic reversal every couple thousand years. Well, not only is that doing what it's doing to the Earth and all the other planets, that triggers the major nova blast on the sun as well.
So it's cycle upon cycle upon cycle and different
exactly.
lengths. So what about what was I going to say about that? So when you talk about the magnetic pole shift and you say that's a day, is that the one that happens very quickly and then it goes back? So what's going to happen
That's the crustal shift. So the magnetic pole shift has been unfolding for decades already.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to wrap my head around. So, but then that reaches a point where the crustal shift happens, or are they connected at all?
The sun does it.
Okay.
Because the magnetic thing weakens too much, right? And that's too much sun in, basically.
You can't unlock the crust without the sun's part of this. But it turns out the same thing that is slowly making us have our magnetic pole flip, and which is slowly changing the other planets as well, and not just their climate. Uranus's magnetic poles are moving, and there's actually evidence that every other planet is having a magnetic pole shift, just like Earth is right now. But that process, when you extrapolate it forward and look, okay, when we actually hit the full magnetic reversal point, as an expert in the physics of what's happening at the surface of the sun, I go, oh, crap. Because let me tell you what that does from a chemical and from a physics perspective to the sun when we actually reach that point. The solar wind stops blowing.
Right.
The photoluminosity production begins to dim. The sun turns red, and then quickly afterwards turns black for a couple of days. While this is happening, dust and material is accumulating in the sun, making it deeper and darker and darker. And then all of a sudden we come out of the magnetic reversal. We get a kick back in of the electric currents from the galaxy, and the sun's got its hand enclosed around a firecracker. Basically, all of those surface processes, the high UV and X-ray production, the solar wind production, it kicks back on, but there's a layer of dust and plasma all throughout the sun's atmosphere that gets blasted off into space in all directions, and that's the sun's micronova. Now, not only does that explain the black sun, which is seen in every single religion and every single myth from across the world throughout time, even Khufu, the very, very old Egyptian pharaoh, identified himself with the black sun and not the white sun. And so we're now starting to understand a lot of these things and why the ancients feared the sun and other things like that. Because why would they fear the sun if they didn't see something terrifying like that? If you think about it. Why would they
track it so much?
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why they revered and feared it. But so not only does it begin to explain all of those other things, this is actually also the only way that you could, if the sun does this during this disaster cycle, that's the only way to get those nova level isotopes in the disaster layers of the geology. And furthermore, it's the only way to unlock the crust. So here's something to think about. The crust is not like, okay, so we know the crust is solid, but the mantle is liquid. But it's not like plywood floating on a lake where it can, bang around. There's a layer in between the solid crust and the liquid mantle called the low velocity zone. And it's a partial melt layer. And because it's partially melted, it can still move and flow with the liquid below, but it's sticking and catching like molasses or glue on the solid rock above. Now, this is also the most conductive spherical shell layer of the entire planet. When we get modern day solar storms, we can already detect the electric currents induced down into the mantle. So they're certainly hitting that low velocity zone between the mantle and the crust. Now we're talking about a solar micronova, the biggest of solar storms. And with the surge of current through that partially melted layer, whether you want to call it resistive heating, ohmic heating, Joule heating, it flash melts that locking layer between the crust and the mantle, unlocks them, and then the crust can go wherever it wants to go. But how do we know where the crust wants to go? And why would there be a pattern? Well, it just so happens when you have any spinning object, and this is a basic theorem in physics, any spinning object, if any point on the spinning object weighs more than the others, so picture you've got a ping pong ball, but then you glue a tiny iron fragment up somewhere. So that's the highest weight distribution point. That will want to spin at the point of greatest centrifugal force, which is the equator at any spinning object. Well, turns out the Earth, even though it has a slight bulge, it's not very much. We have mountains, we have valleys. They're really not that big. the greatest weight distribution is the ice that builds here and builds here. Those want to be at the equator right now. They wanted to be there yesterday. They wanted to be there the day you were born. The problem is they can't pull themselves over because the crust is locked to the mantle through the low velocity zone. When we get this solar micronova, which is the only way to explain these nova level isotopes in the disaster sediment, and the only way to actually get this is through a galactic magnetic reversal, which actually explains the fact that this happens in a cycle over and over again and explains what we're seeing on all the other planets. It just so happens this solar micronova is the only way to unlock the crust and let it do the tilt that it wants to do. And if it's the polar ice that's doing it, it will be 90 degrees, and then more ice grows at the poles so that it can tilt 90 degrees the next time. It'll always be 90 degrees because the ice that has been building up for those thousands of years wants to go to the equator. That's how this all works. Now, there's more to it, actually. So, for example, there is actually galactic physics that fail. So, they couldn't model it. They couldn't figure out how to get it to work with the math, even though they were seeing it out there. They couldn't do it on paper. And then somebody figured out, okay, well, if you could have major super flares and nova level events injected directly into this magnetic field of the galaxy, then it all works. Oh, you mean like while we're getting a magnetic reversal, we get a solar micronova, and this happens at other stars too? This explains the crustal tilt. It explains the isotopes and the disaster layers. It fixes the greatest problem mathematically in galactic physics.
And if all stars do it, it explains why we haven't met the aliens.
It does explain the Fermi paradox quite well, actually.
So then the oceans end up like sloshing over the continents, and then there's a new, and then does it form new continents then, or new? I guess it would. Was it? Some of them are going to be exposed still. Some of them will come back.
So I imagine the world's going to look a little different, but probably not too terrible.
Because it's going to slosh and then settle at some point.
Right. It will settle back down. Now, there will have been mantle heaving. Some areas will have risen.
Yeah,
some areas may have collapsed. But in general, like, for example, in this country, the Rockies and the Appalachians, they're both dozens, hundreds, thousands of cycles old. It's not like those were just created 6,000 years ago.
Right.
So things remain.
Yeah.
But,
so is the cycle, I'm sure you've seen that there's that 2-state spin that's going around. Ethical Skeptic had it in his
I've seen that.
Pretty close to the 2 states then?
No, I don't think so. I believe they're mistaken. Now,
okay.
If you follow us on X, we're constantly sharing each other's work. We kind of take the opinion of, it's kind of like if you've got, let's say Michael Jordan wants to run a 1-3-1 defense and Scottie Pippen's like, nah, man, I think we're better in man defense right now. They don't agree, but same team, right? It's the same kind of thing with myself, Ethical Skeptic, Noble Art, open-minded approach.
Open-minded approach. I was going to.
Yeah. So
he shares your stuff a lot. Yeah.
We all have this same team mentality. It's just
it's great, and you can disagree about some things and agree about others. And what a concept.
The thing for me is Einstein's math said that it's Greenland and this part of Antarctica, south of Australia, that have the greatest weight distribution. Now I'm going to put my fingers where they are. Let's see if I can get them opposite sides.
Opposite, yeah.
That means they're going to want to tilt like this. So I basically tell people, look at Greenland and then make Greenland go to the equator like that. Okay.
So Alberta's looking all right. I mean, it'll be warm.
And so not only did Einstein do that math, but when you put Greenland at the equator like that, the North Pole is the Indian Ocean and near South America, which is exactly where Isaac Newton, Walker, Deluc, Cuvier all said the next magnetic pole, the next geographic poles were going to be. And it just so happens the magnetic poles aren't staying on opposite sides of the planet. You know, like they're not going like this. They're coming to a collision course right there in the Indian Ocean where one of the magnetic poles are going to be. I can't see that as a coincidence. The fact that researchers, the first catastrophism researchers, nailed that as one of the magnetic poles. The fact that if you look at where the magnetic poles are actually moving, it's one of the new poles. And if you go with Einstein's math, it's one of the new poles. It's not one of the new poles in the multi-state theory. So in ethical skeptics, those aren't the new poles.
So, but you think it's back and forth between those two all the time?
I think it's back and forth between that and what we have now. And I've got
Which makes sense, because if you ever had it where you had water on each side, it would almost negate the effect. If you could get it to where you had an ocean at each pole, then you might not, because the ice would be weighted down.
Yeah,
in
that'd
water.
be weird. That would be strange. And so it's things like that, plus that triple coincidence I just mentioned, Einstein's math, DeLuc, Isaac Newton, all of those ancestors, plus where we actually see the magnetic poles moving now. I feel like I've got a pretty solid triple coincidence to say I've got the correct tilt. Does this mean I discard ethical skeptic and all these other folks and I talk shit about them online? Absolutely not. Same team, because we all know there is a cycle. We all know we are due for this cycle to happen again now. We are seeing everything to tell us, yep, this cycle has begun and it's getting faster and faster. And when we look at the details, from the ozone to the weather to the volcanoes to the earthquakes to the cellular impact, this is an extinction level event or very near it. And so we are all on that same team right there. It's just we have some disagreements about, now it turns out which way the earth tilts is going to be a huge factor. Like, I mean, that is going to determine a lot, but it's definitely a 8th, 9th, 10th item down the line type thing that we disagree about.
Is that why Trump wants Greenland?
I think that's why Trump wants Greenland. Yeah, because he knows. I mean, look, here's the other thing. Where are all the seed vaults?
Norway.
All the seed vaults are in the are like Norway, Sweden, Finland, northern Russia, places that would be close to the equator after this all goes down like that. And so, yes, there's a disagreement between the people who I've kind of playfully labeled the kings of catastrophe. There are some disagreements, but I think if you had any one of them on here right now, they would say same team. Same
yeah
team.
Oh yeah, it seems like it. I can tell by the way you guys post each other's stuff on X.
Yeah.
How do we reconcile the climate cult blaming us for increased extreme weather events, and yet the CO2 coalition and all these people that push back against the cult show evidence that the extreme weather events aren't and haven't been increasing over the last 100 years? Like,
no, they actually haven't been. It's just that news is talking about them more. They know they can just say it, and most people don't have a way to know any better.
So, but are you saying that they're increasing too, though? Now,
no,
or are they going to start?
Really.
Are they going to start, or is that part of the cycle? Is that increasing that?
So the only things that we should be seeing so far right now are some of the droughts should be getting worse. Some of the floods should be getting worse. The lightning records should be falling pretty solidly.
Okay.
I said that for the first time, I think in 2013. In 2015, we got the first major record breakers. They were actually just making news again this past week about lightning records that were broken, weren't they? And those were actually from bolts in 2017. I can tell you there are some from 2019 and 2020 that are under review, under study. And maybe in the next year or two, we're going to hear that, oh, nope, those broke those broke the records again. That's the kind of stuff that we should be seeing. Other than that, what we should be seeing are subtle but growing changes in things that most people are never going to recognize, like the shutdown of the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, the heat transport currents in the Atlantic, or the fact that the southern version of it that goes around Antarctica already collapsed and reversed. And so things like that are going to lead to more extreme weather. But thus far, if you're looking at tornadoes, hurricanes, thunderstorms, other things like that. That kind of stuff probably shouldn't be changing too much just yet, at least not to the point where, a bunch of people who think CO2 controls global temperature would be able to detect something like that.
Yeah.
What about more imminently? Like as we get closer, what are some of the warning signs? Because when I look at the map, I still might want to get a little bit further west than I am.
More extremification. So more extremification. And so this we have been starting to see. But the only reason I can say that is because I'm pulling in all of the data and I'm using some pretty complicated math. And I'm looking for anything, even like fractions of a degree here or fractions of a precipitation mark there. So we all know, even during the summer, we'll have a couple of days that aren't as hot. I grew up in Pittsburgh, very, very cold and snowy. And yet I swear every year at some point in January, we could go golfing. It would happen. And then the next week it'd be snowing again. That kind of thing, faster and more extreme swings the other way. We're talking like your location breaks a heat record one day. And then 48 hours later, you're close to a cold record. And in the middle, you had a horrifying storm.
Do you think we need to be underground?
Not yet, no. But when the sun turns red, you better have somewhere to hide.
How long that's what I wanted to turn red, then it's going to turn black, and basically you've got till the color comes back to be someplace because it's not going to discharge till the black disappears.
So
right?
Basically, I wouldn't even be coming out to see if the color's black. But when the micronova blast hits Earth, unlocks the crust, that's the great earthquake where the whole world shakes. So when the sun turns red, go hide. When everything starts shaking, come back up. That is the best way to deal with the zenith of the disaster.
Start shaking or finishes shaking?
When it starts shaking, you want to come back up.
Okay.
Because you don't want to be underground just in case your bunker or the abandoned mine or the cave system you found or even the makeshift root cellar that you built doesn't survive. You don't want it collapsing in on you. So when the sun starts changing colors, go underground. The moment you feel shaking, no.
So I got
everything electronic is going to fry
before the sun turns red.
Probably because don't forget, definitively nothing electronic could survive the solar micronova and the electric current induction. But the only thing stopping everything that the sun does from doing that to every piece of technology is Earth's magnetic field. It's getting weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And so at some point, even before the full flip and before the zenith of everything, it's going to be so weak that it's not going to take very much for the sun to just take out all the technological things that we do have.
Well, that probably already happened then.
What?
So in this scenario, it's like the power's probably been out for months before the sun turns red.
I would imagine that we're going to have months to years of basically living like Stone Age cavemen or Vikings before the sun turns red.
Which would give me time to dig up. Like, how deep does this bunker have to be? Because I do know some caves, but
it doesn't have to be too deep. And because what you really want is you want to be shielded from ultraviolet light, which, I mean, having a big hat will do that. Ultraviolet light doesn't penetrate physical objects, you know? You want to be able to hide from ultraviolet light if you need to. And then when that electromagnetic nova shell hits Earth, the impact on the weather is going to be outrageous in terms of wind, hail, temperature changes, things like that. You need to hide from that too.
What about gold? Can that help insulate you at all?
It could help a little. It can help a little bit, but like, what are you insulating?
Well, I mean, let's say electronics or something. I mean, I know you said it can penetrate to the core, but you know, I heard you talk about gold as well being somewhat protective here, and maybe that's why it's so important to the ancients.
So yeah, but I mean, here's the thing: what technology are you going to save, and why?
Yeah, no, I get it. It's because if it's all going down, and the
If
only
it's all
thing that's
going,
protected is your little black mirror in a gold case. I mean,
yeah, I
what's the
mean, so
point?
like, if you can
The only
protect
thing
things,
useful would be the
then
truck.
they're going to work until the batteries die. It's not like you have a grid to plug into. It's not like solar panels. Solar panels are like the most vulnerable technology
I
there.
guess it would be a truck, like Darren said, if you could protect a vehicle somehow, or
Well,
like
the
an
best way
engine,
to-
maybe.
the best way to do. Have you guys heard of the Big Burb? So me and Rocky built an EMP proof vehicle.
Oh,
Yeah, so we replaced all the electronics. I mean, it's even got an air starter. I mean, it's literally air pressure that starts this thing. It's got, electric headlights and other things it needs to basically pass an inspection. But in terms of being able to turn the thing on and start driving,
So like my truck is even pretty close to that. So from my point of view, there might just be a couple little electronic gadgets I might want to throw in a gold box
Yeah.
so I can replace my solenoid and my starter.
and here's the other thing, that's one use for gold, but like it's much easier to just get plastic or rubber and protect things that way. So I'm not worried about protecting technology, but there's a bunch of little like small tools that I want to protect, and other kinds of tools that are metal that I want to protect. I don't want those taking the induction and melting. I'm putting all of those in plastic and rubber, because what we're really looking to do is we're looking to avoid the global scale induced electric current from jumping to the thing you don't want destroyed. And it's the same reason that they wrap wires in plastic, because if you didn't, you couldn't control where the electricity goes. Just like if you have something wrapped in plastic and you've got electric current going towards it, if it's just got regular atmosphere on both sides, it's not going to try to go through the plastic. It's going to just go around, just like water will go around a giant rock. Water and electricity want to take, they're lazy as shit. They want to take the easiest path to get where they're going. And if you give them a reason to avoid the things that you want to protect, it's going to avoid it. It doesn't hold a grudge. It doesn't have anything against you personally. It's just trying to get from point A to point B the easiest way possible without running into too much resistance. If you put resistance in the way and it's like, oh, wait, you mean I could just slide around you like that? It's going to do it.
So that'll work for like plastic bullet cases and stuff like that.
So the thing that pops into my head are those giant black plastic bins with the yellow tops that are in everybody's garage that I yell at my kids, throw your soccer ball, your tennis racket, your hockey stick, throw all that stuff in the bin. Throw it in the bin. Don't leave it out. Just throw it in the bin. Those are perfect. Absolutely perfect. Love them.
So what about your ranch? We got to talk about that before we let you go. And then the floatables, and like, aren't you putting on some courses and some people are going there? You're kind of helping people prep through this stuff.
Yeah. We got our next course is just a couple days away. We do both official prepping courses and pole shift conference days where there's prepping stuff there too, but you're also learning the science of how this all works and why it happens. We do that at Observer Ranch all the time. I would say not more than a couple weeks goes by we don't have one of those events that somebody can come to and learn pretty much everything that you're going to need. Now, in terms of what my plans are at the ranch and some of the survival stuff we got, I'm not too keen on sharing a lot of that stuff publicly. But suffice to say that I've got 3 kids. I'm getting them into the next stage of Earth, come hell or high water. I've been thinking about this for a while.
Without giving away too much, what are the most important things to be stockpiling? Like, will water be a thing, or will it be raining quite a bit?
So I do think that if you can, I do think rain capture is going to be big. I do think finding sources of water are going to be big. There will be rain. There will be water. Having some stored up is never a terrible plan. Food, while you are getting back into the swing of things, I mean, I recommend at least a year of food. But that means you also need the seeds to start regrowing. It means you need whatever you're going to be using for trapping, foraging, hunting, things like that. You need all of that stuff too. You need to be prepared for the hottest of the hot and the coldest of the cold in terms of clothes, blankets. You need to be able to have pre-industrial, non-electric tools to build things, build shelters, build anything. You need knowledge. You need books, because nobody can master all the skills that you're going to need. Have a lot of books. Books that talk about how they did stuff way back in the day. I would say those are probably the most important things that an individual can stockpile.
What about these floatables?
So it is worthwhile to consider that the wave may get to you and that you may have to float away. I am willing to bet that humans have survived just by floating away almost every single cycle that has happened. I guarantee you at least one person managed to float away. But also go and take a look at some of the videos on the internet from the Japan tsunamis. It ain't just water. There's trees, there's shards of glass and metal and nails and rocks and people and cars and houses and everything else you could imagine, because the water torrents are so powerful. So when you're thinking about your floatable, let's think about something other than an inflatable, something that can be easily popped. It needs to be able to take a pounding once or twice and stay afloat. It needs to be big enough for you, your family, and a bunch of supplies, because the chances of you floating for 12 hours in one direction and finding your way back to where you just left, not good. And even if you could, everything you left there is gone. Which brings up another point. If you're floating, you're probably going to be going 6, 12, 15 hours in one direction with the wave. Then you're going to stop, and then you're going to go back the other direction. When that happens, you need to find land instantly, because you are in the middle of being dragged out to the middle of the ocean. And for you to survive the magnetic pole shift, the collapse of society, the solar micronova, the earth turning over in the great waves, just to die in the middle of the ocean would be a giant middle finger to God or fate or whatever the hell you believe in. So don't do that, okay? I do recommend everybody have a way to float if they have to. And just know that when you stop after several hours and you start floating back the other way, you're being dragged out into the middle of the ocean, and you need to get to land as soon as you can, any way that you can.
If you're as far west as like you and I are, and Graham to a lesser extent, you'd probably bottom out before you got to the ocean, do you think? Like, say I the waves getting here, can I just go hop in my motorboat and just fucking hope for the best?
Maybe. I mean, your motor's not going to work, but it's possible you could hope for the best and that could work. The problem is the water's moving faster than you are. And so even if you do manage to float away, when you stop and you start going back the other way, if you turn around and look behind you, it's going to be nothing but water as far as the eye can see. And so I wouldn't count on just bottoming out, and as something that's definitely going to happen.
Wonder how much anchor line you'd need.
Depends on where you are. I mean, if you're right
I'm
up in the
close,
foot,
right? I'm close.
I
think I'm at 3,300 feet, right where I sit right now.
You might have oceanfront property.
Well, I was playing with the map, and I can't remember what the number was, but there was a number that like half of my property was ocean, and just like the house was okay.
That's funny. But yeah, I mean, look, when it comes to which way the Earth is going to tilt, the exact physics of the solar micronova versus a super flare versus the great solar flash, people have a bunch of different ideas. What's most important to realize is this. This is a cycle. We are perfectly due in time. Everything says it has already begun. It is a major species killer. It is a major killer of life on Earth. Humans do survive I mean, we've survived up till now. There's a very good chance we can again if you are aware and you prepare. And beyond that, something causes tsunamis to go over entire continents. And that's something you got to be prepared for as well. And so even if some of these other things, all right, even if you could conclusively say there's no solar micronova or the Earth crust doesn't do this, it doesn't change the fact that all that other stuff, the climatological, volcanic, earthquake, the radiation damage to cells, and the tsunamis themselves, via some other mechanism, occur. All of those things are real. Even if you want to put a giant X through the things that you just can't get your brain around. Okay, fine. This is still an extinction level event, and it's happening right now. And it's going to be done with probably before 2050, which means us, our kids, our grandkids. That's who's dealing with this. This isn't some way down the line, you're going to have to deal with it kind of thing. This is us and our families are going to deal with this. Speaking of which, I have to go get my kids here in a moment.
Yeah, it's about time. Anyway, Ben, this has been great. Where can people follow you? Where can they find your work? How can they get down to the ranch?
I would say that if you want to keep up day to day, the YouTube channel is Space Weather News. That's my logo, that red and blue magnetic field right there. You'll notice it. And other than that, observerranch.com. Like I said, we put on the pole shift conference and the prepping, situational awareness prepping days every single month. Head over to that website, find a time, come see us.
And we got to get Randall out there.
I'd love to get Randall out here, although I will have to say this. The reason why I stopped calling him is because it's very, very rare when I have 3 or 4 hours to sit there and listen to someone talk at me through the phone while I say nothing.
Yeah.
I very rarely have that. So
once he gets going.
Yeah. I very rarely have that amount of time. But
Ben, this has been great. Thanks for coming on the show, and good luck out there.
Good to see you again, man. Take care.
Have a good day, guys.
And that was a chat. Ben Davidson, Suspicious Observers, The Coming Cataclysm. What do you think?
Yeah, that was good. I'm looking at the Observer Ranch right now. It looks like super cool. I mean, it's kind of what Randall like is talking about. They've kind of got a school here up there, and yeah, that's or like learning center, and that's pretty cool.
Maybe we should go to one.
Yeah, we should.
Probably not a terrible idea.
We should probably do a conference with Randall up there, with Randall and Ben. That'd be awesome.
That would be a good one. That would be a good one. Big thanks to Ben for coming on the show. Of course, big thanks to you guys for listening, for being our Plus supporters. We appreciate you. We couldn't do without you. So thanks. Keep it coming. Tell your friends to sign up. Check out Grimerica.ca, of course, for other podcasts. Contact at thecabin.com for trips and events with Randall. Adultbrain.ca for all those ebooks, audiobooks mostly, and also print books and publishing books and stuff like that, but tons of audiobooks. And GrimericaCBD.com for tinctures and gummies. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.